name is Mandy Penny. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the lead educational developer for digital pedagogies and writing across the curriculum at CTL. And I'm joining you today from the city colonially known as London, Ontario, which is land governed by the London Township Treaty of 1796. These are the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Lenape-Walk, and the Attawandaron peoples. As I discuss the value of in-class writing workshops with you today, I really want to note that my approach to developing writing communities is informed by Indigenous principles of relationship and community building. So here I'm thinking about components and values such as storytelling, reciprocity, respect, mutuality, trust, and care. And in identifying the specific values that I was going to mention in my introduction today, I'm drawing on Rebecca Chartrand's excellent article on Anishinaabe pedagogies to articulate values from which we can frame our work with what she calls a place-conscious lens. As we ease into the webinar today, I'd like to invite you to join me in a collaborative Google document. So we have two different ways that you can access that document today. We have a bit.ly short link at the bottom of this slide, bit.ly/writing in class with a capital letter for each word, and then a QR code that you can also scan with your phone. To start by saying that I do not really see the work of indigenizing and decolonizing academic structures and practices as something that is parallel to the work of writing pedagogy. Rather, it's something that is integral to it. So as a cis, white, and queer settler, I am really committed to advocating for writing instruction practices that are going to disrupt the transactional or banking models of education and replace them with ones that are contextual and equitable. Today's webinar is the second in a series of 3 that are focused on engaging student writers with an attentiveness to instructor workload. Writing workshops that are intentionally built into class time can empower students through the development of co-constructed knowledge and the celebration of their situated voices in the classroom. So in my own career as an educator, I've worked both as writing faculty and as the coordinator of a writing and learning center. Because of that kind of dual role that I've played through the years, I've long been interested in thinking about how the pedagogies and praxis in one space, the classroom, can speak to the pedagogies and praxis in the other, in, for example, the writing center, and vice versa. So in writing centers, the pedagogy is really focused on relationship building between the tutor and the learner alongside shared agency and an approach that really prioritizes the development of an authorial voice over and above perhaps the individual grade that one given assignment might receive. Increasingly, we're also seeing in writing centers that practitioners are drawing on pedagogies of care and of justice. So transforming writing instruction, I think, by bringing students to the backstage or the hidden curriculum of writing and communication development is one way that we can bring our whole selves to the classroom as instructors, as researchers, as writers, while inviting students to do the same. So I have a quotation here for you on this first slide that comes from an article on communities of care in classrooms. So the authors, Mata and Bennett, advocate an attentiveness to what they call time space, or moments in a classroom that are informed by the people in it. And they argue that this attention allows for the democratization of teaching and learning practices based on the individual contexts of the folks in the classroom and their social locations. So this quote says that flattening hierarchies in the classroom can foster, quote, the building of pedagogical intimacy, which opens the possibilities for self and other recognition as knowers and creators of knowledge. So the first type of 2 in-class writing workshops that I'd like to discuss today is a drafting workshop. And students can really benefit from in-class conversations about the iterative nature of writing. So rather than proceeding linearly from, brainstorming to drafting to revising to submitting, rather as writers, we move back and forth among and within these steps as we think and rethink, write and rewrite. It is also helpful for students to understand that the struggles that they may face in their own writing, and here I'm thinking about things like procrastination and writer's block or a lack of engagement with a topic, are ones that we as instructors, researchers, and writers also face, and that all writers benefit from writing communities for solidarity, for gentle accountability, and for a variety of situated feedback from different people. Offering this kind of dedicated writing time in class can also support the development of writing outside of the class. It's a kind of modeling, essentially, offering support and space to share and reflect on their experiences of writing. So here are some of the benefits that we might expect to see when we institute in-class drafting workshops. Guided individual writing time with an emphasis on sustainability and on community. Goal setting, so setting up specific kinds of targeted goals for individual writing sessions, and again, over time. Taking breaks for hydration, for stretching, for socializing to support physical, emotional, and cognitive wellness. And finally, conversations about things like authorial voice, successes and struggles in writing, goal setting and tracking, and the importance of support systems. Because sessions like these are not the same as peer review time and are focused primarily on individual work, they're more easily scalable based on class size. And so they can be offered in person, online, and through hybrid formats with little tweaking required. Over time, students often come to find an intrinsic motivation to attend as they build confidence and community. In the meantime, I've seen a variety of methods that instructors have used in order to engage students and to incentivize attendance at these sessions, including reflective writing assignments that are attached to the experience of attending the workshop, and co-creating community guidelines about workshop attendance at the beginning of the course. And I wanted to just give a specific example of a way to structure your in-class writing workshop that is scalable for both one-hour classes and for longer ones. So here I'm thinking about the Pomodoro technique in particular. So the Pomodoro technique is a project management technique that was developed by Francisco Cirillo, and it's often used by writers in order to set and track goals and develop a sustainable writing practice that resists the urge to, as we often call it, binge write. So in this method, writers will dedicate 25-minute chunks of time, or what we sometimes call POMs, to writing and take short breaks, usually about 5 minutes in between. Writers are encouraged to set goals for each POM, but also to track and revise those goals based on whether or not they're accomplishing tasks within these chunks of time, and also to be mindful of their physical and their affective and their psychological needs during breaks. Over time, these kind of Pomodoro-based workshops can encompass a whole range of activities that we associate with writing as a practice, so research and reading or note-taking, for example. But often writers new to the structure, so here especially I'm thinking about early year undergraduate students, can be encouraged to spend most of their time actively putting words to a draft, whether that's a more formal structured draft or whether they're doing free writing in order to move through some of their initial ideas on a topic. So that is one type of in-class writing workshop. And so the ones that are focused on individual drafting and goal setting develop community primarily in what we might think of as the in-between moments, right? So the conversations that people are having before, during, and after the workshop, and then they have their individual units of writing time. In contrast, peer review workshops typically are relational, based in relationship from beginning to end. So what's happening here is that students are given the opportunity to give peer feedback to their classmates on their writing. And research indicates that reviewers will benefit as much from the process of peer review as the writers will, through, for example, modeling and thinking about their own assumptions around writing and the kinds of feedback that they're crafting for their peers. Traditionally, peer review has happened in one of two primary ways, either through silent reading followed by written feedback, or through a read aloud protocol in which the writer will listen silently while the reviewer reads aloud and reacts in real time to the draft that is before them. Felicia Rose Chavez, though, has recently written an excellent book called The Anti-Racist Writing Workshop. And she points out that frameworks in which the writer remains silent will disproportionately disadvantage people of color through a further systemic silence in which they are told, as she puts it, to write, but not to exercise voice. So in terms of an alternative to the more traditional peer review structures that I've seen in the classroom, we could instead encourage conversation between the writer and the reviewers and leave agency for the facilitation of the peer review session in the hands of the writer who is being reviewed at that time. So the goal here is that the feedback that the writer receives is in service of that writer's individual goals without diminishing either their spoken or their written voice. So what happens is that ideally an empowered writer can frame that review in terms of their key questions or concerns with the text. And the reviewers will then respond, perhaps after some silent reading time or by reading aloud, to the areas of focus that the writer has specified. This allows for the development of a writing community that recognizes the degree to which writing, and of course, all communication, is embodied, relational, and goal-oriented. And here is on the slide on the right-hand side, a quotation from Chavez about this process where the writer is empowered to speak up and to facilitate the session. She writes, "Participants want to help one another. With proper training, participants become capable of offering thoughtful, intelligent, and generous feedback on one another's writing. Rather than a competitive arena of ego and domination, workshop transforms into a human-to-human dialogue on authorial intent." So early year scholars, especially in the first year or two of their undergraduate education, will need some context and support in understanding the values, the methods, and the goals of peer review. So one common thing that I will see is that, students in the early years of the program will need a nudge away from sentence level feedback, thinking about grammar, word choice, typos, that sort of thing, and more towards what we consider to be sort of global views of the paper, logic, structure, and flow. While their first attempts at peer review, especially in those early years, can be awkward or challenging for them, this approach to writing workshop really thrives on repetition and relationship building, both in the course and beyond. Students can also be encouraged to run similar sessions outside of class time to give them an opportunity to kind of develop those collegial and collaborative skills that are going to serve them well in this course, throughout their programs, into graduate school potentially, and on into their future careers. One common question I've received, especially over the last couple of years, is how to run sessions like this in a hybrid classroom, given our current global context and the likelihood of an ongoing attentiveness to digital pedagogies in the future. So for workshops such as these, I typically encourage instructors and students to level the technology that we're already becoming familiar with over the last couple of years and to create groups that are not solely composed of in-person students or online students, but rather that bring those students together through Zoom so they can have an opportunity to be together in the virtual space. Students can co-write and co-review in Google Documents or other word processing programs. And then if they want to do brainstorming or ask questions or set goals, they can use other websites for collaboration. So here, something like Padlet, Mentimeter, or Scapple. At any point, I would be happy to consult with any of you to discuss effective, engaging, and equitable practices in workshop development. But it's also important to note that our CTL team has other folks you can collaborate with as well. So in particular, I've thought of Everett Igobwa, who is our lead ed dev in critical pedagogies and EDI, and Brad Amberry, who is our lead ed dev in assessment. Because we want to be sure that our writing workshops are inclusive and equitable and that they are attuned to the contexts and relationships in that classroom and beyond, I just wanted to really quickly highlight some key equity considerations when you're thinking about implementing in-class writing workshops. So the first one here is accessibility. So here, for example, you could consider flexible due dates that may benefit a single parent caring for a sick child, or perhaps offering multimodal or hybrid opportunities for engagement so that students with disabilities are not excluded or disadvantaged. A second equity consideration relates to trauma-informed approaches to these workshops. So here you could consider an awareness of research or writing topics that may traumatize or re-traumatize your students based on their lived experiences, and ensure that you do not require any public disclosure of personal traumas, even if they have chosen to write about those things as a part of their assignment. The final equity consideration I'll highlight here is racial justice and anti-oppressive practices. One way to consider this, beyond the peer review suggestions that I've just offered, is to facilitate classroom conversations around the idea of global Englishes and the ways that expectations for academic writing and genre in and beyond your discipline may have built barriers for racialized students and students whose first or primary language is not English. So I have included here for you a list of some of the works that I refer to while building out this webinet. So please feel free, once this is posted, to look at any of those if you're interested. I'll finish up by saying that writing instruction, like writing itself, can be most sustainable and productive when it's done in community. In addition to the CTL team, I would also urge you to consult with units across campus, including the Center for Writers, which offers course-embedded presentations and workshops on writing and communication. The third webinet in this series is going to focus on sustainably engaging students through the lens of assessment practices. So I'm going to offer some best practices for assessing writing, and then identify one newer framework that mirrors co-created knowledge in the classroom and through co-created grading practices shared between the instructor and the student. I've got two links here for you at the top of this final slide. The first is our CTL request form if you'd like to request a formal consultation to talk about any of these topics with me going forward. But also, because I'm new to the community at the University of Alberta, I've also included just my work email. If anyone would like to reach out, say hello, grab a coffee, I'm always open to more casual meetings as well.